Welcome to school year 2021, our most unique and exciting year ever. I'm going to do a quick review of what is new for this year. So, welcome back to elementary mathematics. One of the very first things that is new and unique for this year is inside our Unit 0, Building a Math Community. Inside Building a Math Community, we have a document called Building a Math Community with Social Distancing or Remote Learning. This document is just some really social emotional principles: transparency, communication, and some ideas of how that might relate to mathematics. So, for example, in transparency, how long is 20 seconds? That's something very new for our students. 20 seconds themselves is a time that's not introduced until fourth grade, but we really need to introduce it to our kindergarten starting way younger now, at least the concept. So, having a document that kind of goes over transparency, communication, shared ownership, proactive support, and then some project ideas that you might be able to do with social distancing or remote learning around technology. So it's just a little help. We know Unit 0 is going to be very different this year, and please make with it as best as you can. But we want to build a nice, tight community with our students from a little bit further apart than last year. Another thing that is different is we've updated our framework planning tools. If you notice, to put you at ease, they're the same order. They're the same standards. What's slightly different is the number of days. And the reason for the number of days being slightly different is that we wanted to embed some foundational learning opportunities that students might need some review from last year's remote learning time, and they might need to review it again. So what is different and how does it work? So inside the updated framework planning tools, foundational standards are still here, but we've added to them, or we've ensured that we've captured anything that might have been missed towards the end of the year. So if you'll notice, it'll say like Unit 6, Unit 5. So if it aligns as a foundational understanding to this unit, it's ensured that we've captured it here. Now, those standards also have a direct alignment to some additional lesson time. So what we've done is added some days so that way we can ensure that there's time to make sure that our students are solid in this. So there's some foundational lessons that go back to the previous year of things that they might need to know before we go on. So it's embedded throughout the unit. There are optional lessons if your students need them. Every classroom is going to be different. So then the question is, how do I know if my classroom needs it? How do I know if my students need it? That's the other change. We've also added inside the evidence of learning a unit check-in. Now, the unit check-ins for Unit 1 are also called the beginning of the year test from headquarters. And they're a little bit more formal with a cover page and everything, but they still serve the same purpose. So you'll see the unit check-in, which is 3 to 5 questions that have to deal with the foundational lessons, the foundational standards from the previous year for this year that are directly tied to this unit. Every unit from 1 to 7 will have a new check-in. So you'll see it's not like we're not giving them a 50 question test at the beginning of the year. We're kind of chunking it up to 3 to 5 questions throughout the year. So it's a lot more manageable for students and for us for grading. So it's a very quick assessment. And what we do when we're scoring them, we're not looking for necessarily giving them a grade on it. We really want to know what kind of errors they're making. So if I'm putting time in my lesson plan to reteach something, I know what the misunderstanding is of my class and my students are in a small group, and I can plan specifically for that misunderstanding. So inside the teacher guide, you're going to see the correct response, and you're going to see some common errors or misconceptions. So if the errors look like this is the misconception that they probably have. So you're going to go through and look to see for the students who were not correct in their understanding, where was that mistake? Where were they misunderstanding the information? Because once we understand why they're making that mistake, we can target our lessons and really make a change. The other thing we're looking for when we get to the addition, subtraction, computation problems is we're looking for what kind of strategies they're using. Because if they're using counting up on their fingers or on their toes, we really want them to start making those models with concrete or representational. If they're already making models, we want them to start using those more complex strategies of properties and so on until eventually they're on the place value, standard algorithm, or mental math. So we want to see what strategies they utilize, whether they got it correct or incorrect, to move them up to that more complex strategy. So the teacher guides and the check-ins will be in a folder under Stage 2, Evidence of Learning. So that's it for normal. There's one other thing that we've added this year, and you'll see resources for remote learning. There's a little framework of exactly what those are on a summary page. It just kind of shows you a year at a glance of weekly focus. So in remote learning, we know that we don't necessarily have the amount of time that we do in a normal classroom. So we kind of laid out a weekly focus. So that way we know when we're planning activities or stretches. And then we have the remote learning framework planning tool. And you're going to see a big watermark that says remote learning because a lot of it's the same. And we didn't want people to get confused between the two frameworks if they printed them out. The number of days is the same and all of this background is the same. What's different is the amount of lessons and the SEPA, which if you look at the other training, it'll go really in depth into that. But for blended learning, if you're required to do some blended learning, here's some resources that you might be able to use inside your Google Classroom, very easy. So you don't have to go through everything in the Schoology Stage 3 communities of practice to find out which ones are digital and which ones are not. You can kind of go here to these online resources, or all the way at the bottom, here is all of the Go Math digital resources, plus the headquarters website for digital resources that have some of the Go Math ones built in here. So if you click on these buttons, they go into some games and then the animated math models and songs and some activities for the students. So that's in a nutshell. Have a great year. Bye.